Thoughts on Trumpton, a model for a traditional society. So Trumpton is an idea that a YouTuber named Academic Agent made about a sort of traditional society that sort of cordons itself off from the rest of the world. And this is sort of an idea that I've had for a while. So I wanted to go over some of my ideas and discuss some of my thoughts and put them in a YouTube format to discuss and so forth. So here are my ideas. And AA's ideas, of course. Discussion points. Points to talk about, discuss, and be disgusted by. Can it work in real life? Is it too authoritarian? And blah, blah, blah. We'll go over these in every instance here. So let's get started. Can it work in real life? Yep. What are the examples? So the Amish are culturally independent of the quote-unquote English. Anyone who's not Amish is an English person, according to the Amish. And the Amish are also somewhat economically independent as well. Orania is another interesting example of an independent group that lives in South Africa. They're Afrikaners, which is a white minority group living in a fairly hostile country. Yet they still exist and they're still functioning so far. Will people like to move to Trumpton? I think most people actually will not want to move to Trumpton, but some will, and that's okay. We're not trying to get everyone to move to Trumpton. We just need a small amount of them. Is it too authoritarian? Is it a dictatorship? And my answer is no. So Trumpton is not a state. It's a community. People don't have to live there. Places like Trumpton give a broader range of lifestyles people may want or not want to live in. Most likely, Trumpton would require a host nation to live in. People would probably pay a small tax to the host nation and a fee to Trumpton's civil services. In a place like the United States, Trumptonites would likely pay low taxes due to the relatively low income. Will it get BTFO'd? Probably not, but it could. Trumpton's biggest external threat would probably be persecution from a woke state or subversion. A place like Trumpton may need to live in a sympathetic host nation/state/county. As long as Trumptonites pay their taxes and obey the host laws, the odds are pretty small of a serious intervention from the host state. Places like Trumpton would be relatively small and politically inert, at least at first. In the same way the Shire was too small for the Eye of Sauron, Trumpton may be too small to be on the political radar. Communities like Trumpton may be networked or located across the world. Some communities may be dismantled by the host governments, but others would thrive. Is it perfect? Of course not. Trumpton is just an idea. It will and should evolve if put into practice, as long as it doesn't drift from its founding principles. Trumpton is not a strategy for the right to take back power. It may work as a haven and an island in this great sea of woke. If society goes Mad Max, it could provide a foundation to rebuild. It could and should be a place to preserve sacred truths. But will the GDP go up? Line go up? Trumpton is not a place to get rich. It's simply a way to establish a traditional community that is not too scattered. There will be some exchange with the outside world, especially in the early phases. Economic, energy, and cultural sovereignty will be its goal. However, each of these three goals will take time. The average Trumptonite will and should have a smaller income than the average citizen of the host country, say 75%. This offers some advantages. Very low income taxes for most host countries, especially when combined with a high TFR. So people that have a lot of kids with a low income will tend to have lower income taxes. It will keep the materialist away. So materialists can be found on both sides, the left and the right. So this is not a place for them. Encouraged to create a stronger internal economy that does not rely on the host nation's currency, which of course is prone to inflation or is at the mercy of central banks. How to start? Will a place like Trumpton be allowed? Will people want to come in? A place like Trumpton is allowed on private property. The founder or group of founders of a Trumpton community would probably start by buying 1,000 plus acres of arable land. The family founders would move on there and make a charter for the community. They could then recruit interested people to move out and sign the charter. Initially, these people may have remote jobs, thanks to you-know-what. Over time, they could develop necessary skills to support the group, like farming, building, and so forth. The first physical asset the community would acquire would probably be water. This could be done through water catchments and wells, plus purification systems. Farming would be the second physical asset to acquire. Basic medicine and the majority of supplies would still be bought from the outside for the first 3 to 5 years and stocked up when possible. Solar panels, diesel generators, and other forms of decentralized energy would be acquired over time. What is allowed in Trumpton? It's a case by case. Trumpton would have to protect its cultural integrity by banning subversive influxes. A Trumpton community would ban all screens like laptops, smartphones, TVs, etc. Other communities may simply choose to ban the internet, have a video library access to educational moralizing the standards. These tools would be used to inoculate against wokeism. Some other communities may use whitelist filterings, while others enumerated IP/domains would be necessary to the community at large. People could petition to have certain IPs or domain names added or taken off the whitelist. Certain high sugar or high fat foods could also be banned or restricted. Obesity is running rampant in the West. Trumpton should take note and act against it. Legal drugs like weed, alcohol, and even caffeine could be banned or restricted, depending on the charter of the particular community. It's really not a question of whether these drugs are good or bad. It's a question of whether an individual can live in a community free of these temptations/externalities. Can and will it grow, and how so? Can it grow while remaining Trumpton? Growth may be necessary for survival in the long run. Healthy communities generally grow. The primary goal of Trumpton is to preserve traditional values. Part of these values involve community cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is optimized in small town settings, which by definition must remain small. While individual communities should be limited in size, once a community got big enough, it could branch to another location and start another Trumpton community. Think of cell division in biology. Cells have to remain a certain size to retain a large surface area to volume ratio, necessary for cellular function. Once cells become large enough, they split into 2 cells and grow individually. If a Trumpton community grew past, say, 3,000 people, 500 of these people could branch off and form their own community. Other mature communities could continue to bud off to new communities or reinforce existing small ones. Over time, a network of existing communities could grow. Each community could specialize in an uncommon good or service for the network, while being largely self-sufficient for common goods. Conclusion and discussion. A form of Trumpton could exist in real life. A Trumpton community is not the answer for the right, but it is a useful chess piece on the board. Trumpton could be very green and sustainable. Very little driving would be needed inside the community. Solar panels, biodiesels, wind turbines, depending on the environment. The bulk of food would be locally sourced right in Trumpton. Living in Trumpton could become very cheap. Combined with relatively low income, high fertility rates, income taxes would most likely be quite low. Since you wouldn't have a mortgage, a car payment in some cases, very little utility bills, mitigated health bills, the amount of money one did have could go farther. Each different Trump community would be slightly different. This would allow flexibility in experimentation for the network. Just some of my thoughts. This is Whitey McTidy. If you haven't seen the A video, please do.